Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to get to be back here with such a great panel to talk about planning for widespread gene and cell therapy and also anticipating disruption, which we have experienced on a level that is unprecedented this past year. Our panelists are Lisa Deschamps, who's the Senior Vice President and Chief Business Officer of Novartis Gene Therapies, Kieran Murphy, the CEO of GE Healthcare, and Christian Rommel, Head of Pharma R&D at Bayer, although I understand folks in Germany pronounce it Bayer. Christian, how do you pronounce it? Bayer. Okay, I'll pronounce it the appropriate way. So I thought we could kind of start out just by setting the stage for our audience about what your companies do in the cell and gene therapy space. And Christian, why don't we start with you at Bayer?
Yeah, so the people at Bayer, we aspire to make an impact for patients, for their health and life, to addressing high unmet medical need. And for this, we do need access to breakthrough innovation. And we recognize that the area of cell gene therapy, as you said, is unprecedented progress, exactly provides us this opportunity. We see high potential in the technologies of cell and gene therapy. And I do think we are in a strong position. In 2016, Bayer, actually the venture arm of Bayer, Leaps, co-created this Versant venture, a company called Blue Rock Therapeutics. And in 2019, we fully acquired the company. And they are committed to stem cell-based therapies for regenerative medicines. I'm happy to expand on that. And very recently, in 2020, we added the capabilities, innovation, leadership in gene therapy by bringing on board the team of AskBio that is dedicated to gene therapy across a number of therapeutic indications. And right now, we're enjoying to build a portfolio. We already have 6 programs between cell and gene therapy in the clinic. We're learning every day, and we are very, very committed. And we are proud of the teams of AskBio and Blue Rock to have joined us and cherish their entrepreneurship, their leadership, their vision in this area. It's a very exciting time to bring this to patients.
Absolutely. Kieran, tell us about what you're doing at GE.
Well, so I'm kind of in a different sphere here to Christian and Lisa. My main business is in the diagnosis of disease. I like to say that we're at the center of an ecosystem here that's striving for precision health. Of course, cell and gene therapy is the ultimate manifestation of precision medicine. And so I like to think that the diagnostic tools we bring and the data management we bring to this allow for a very precise diagnosis of disease. Now, I have been heavily involved in this from 2011 until last year. I was investing in the toolbox, I guess, and the systems and data architecture behind the production of cell and gene therapies, in particular CAR-T. So I no longer have a dog in the race, so to speak, since we sold our business to Danaher last year, but I'm still very interested, and I'm a huge fan of the work being done.
And Lisa, tell us about what you guys are working on. Folks may have seen the interview I did with Jay Bradner just a little bit earlier, but they also may have tuned in just now to hear you speak. So tell us about what Novartis is working on.
Sure, and thank you, Meg. Yeah, so as you probably heard from Jay and then some of our other colleagues who have been on this week, at Novartis, our mission is to reimagine medicine for patients and their families. And within our gene therapy unit, that doesn't change. We continue to build on that mission of reimagining medicine. And what we'd like to say is expanding possibilities for patients and their families living with rare genetic disease. We have the privilege to do that today in our first gene therapy asset in spinal muscular atrophy, Zolgensma. Spinal muscular atrophy is a condition where in its most severe form, over 90% of children will die before the age of 2. So very significant impact that we can have. If we can, the earlier the better, that we can treat. And over time, we hope to build the same level of impact we're having today in SMA all around the world in other therapeutic areas as well. So we're on a mission. It is aligned to the broader enterprise, and for sure, we've already begun.
So there are kind of two topics that this panel is about. One is planning for is anticipating disruption. And I want to ask you guys a lot of questions about how you do that. And then also how you sort of pivot quickly when there's unplanned disruptions, such as we've had this past year. But also it's, anticipating widespread gene and cell therapy. And I wonder if I could just ask each of you sort of how close you think we might be to that really being a reality, where this is a major staple of healthcare and not such a unique thing that so few patients might experience. And Christian, maybe I'll start with you on that. As you are building the business up, why Bayer thought this was the time to get into this space, and how close do you think we are to it becoming a bigger part of more patients' care?
Yeah. So we recognize there is this convergence of the understanding of the underlying disease biology by the precision of genetic information. So we understand and map better what is the key entry point for the medicines to develop. At the same time, we've seen that the technologies in gene and cell therapy, the processes, the precision, the reliability of the product, and the safety, all of this has just converged and make it now possible. You were asking whether this will become reality. I think we can say it is reality. And I'm very confident that we go through the learning loops and will provide these transformative medical solutions to patients that need them. So it is really a convergence of technology, science, understanding of disease biology, the processes we have in place to provide safe and effective therapies. It will be a journey. It will be a collective learning in the industry on many fronts. But we also have this collective commitment. It needs to be done. We are doing it right now, and I think it's here to stay.
And Lisa, maybe I'll hop over to you, continuing in the therapeutic space. How much opportunity do you see to treat different kinds of diseases with cell and gene therapy, and to really extend the sort of scientific developments and understandings that are happening to commercializing and getting them to patients?
Yeah, thank you. And to build on Christian's point, we believe the science is there. Obviously, it's a journey, and we've all experienced, many twists and turns as we go. So I think, when we think about these types of therapies, they are disruptive in nature from the scientific perspective, all the way through to your earlier comment around how do you commercialize these therapies and bring them into systems that are traditionally catering towards chronic therapies. And that's what we're seeing, right? So there's no roadmap here. It's still early days while we have a number of cell and gene therapies on the market, it's still, in comparison to the broader therapeutic option space, very small. And so, what we need to do is kind of really learn in real time. So we're creating the roadmap as we go. And so I'm not sure we can plan for it, but we need to learn quickly and pivot accordingly, and really find ways to build sustainable processes and systems to ensure that not only can we bring these types of therapies through clinical development, but once we do that and we gain the marketing authorizations, we can then commercialize them, and most importantly, bring them to the patients in need. So we're on a journey. I believe the promise is there. We've already seen the impact that, when proven successful from a clinical perspective, can have. It's significant. It's life-changing. And so it's exciting, and it's certainly inspiring enough to figure it out and make sure that it is sustainable across multiple therapeutic areas.
And Kieran, maybe I'll bring that question to you and to kind of pivot into the dual part of our topic here in terms of anticipating disruption. As the CEO of your business, let's talk about planning for disruption first. I mean, how do you ensure that the work that you guys are doing there is changing things for the better and in major ways?
Absolutely. Look, we're looking at what are the disruptive influences in the industry all of the time. And so we were an early investor into the toolbox of cell and gene therapy because we could see that this was the next frontier. I think as I look at the healthcare industry right now, clearly the AI, machine learning, and generally the use of data science is going to be a big disruptive force. I think there are several things going to drive that. Generally speaking, the productivity of healthcare systems around the world need to address a waste problem that's several trillion in size. And so we approach disruption from the point of view that when you have that degree of waste and you have new technologies like AI and machine learning, this is going to be, the question is, how is that disruption going to take effect, and how can we harness the disruptive influences to maximum effect? And so we tend to do that by really participating in the ecosystem. It was very interesting hearing Mark talk at the end of the last session about the power of the network, because that's really the way we see this evolving. Data in healthcare is a very fragmented in its nature right now. And so what we're trying to do is tie the strands together and really make, from my point of view, it's, can we bring something special? And what we have in the industry is scale. We have a global presence. And, we work with a lot of the startups who have specific applications. And we're bringing what's called Edison platform so that they can bring these applications for clinical decision support or patient management and have them reside on the Edison platform. And we do things like, we sponsor companies through the Edison Accelerator so that they can, evolve and develop software that's going to easily sit in our platform. And so it's not unusual for us to work this way. In my sister company at GE Aviation, we locked onto things like 3D printing very early on in its life cycle because we could see how it was going to revolutionize some of the aviation industry, and we 3D print fuel nozzles for aircraft today. And I think it's in the nature of GE that we look for disruptive technologies that are going to deliver a step forward in productivity.
I was just fascinated by a lot of the things you just said, but the waste problem in healthcare being a multi-trillion-dollar problem, can you just expand on that? What are some of the examples of some of that waste?
Fundamentally, I guess, if you look at the sheer cost of healthcare in the US, for example, it's the percentage of GDP spent on healthcare has gone up and up over many years, and outcomes haven't really improved that much. And the reason why we work with people like Mass General Brigham on AI, as Chris mentioned at the beginning, is we see this opportunity to address, why are patients diagnosed too late? Why are perhaps they misdiagnosed? How can we reduce the stress on physicians, the radiologists? How can we smooth out workflow and improve patient flow so that you get, faster entry of somebody with a condition into hospital and get them through the hospital quickly, because that's a very expensive time, and get them back into a social setting for recovery so that they don't re-enter the hospital. And so this is a problem that we work on with all of our collaborators, clearly Mass General Brigham being the favorite one.
Well, that brings me to a question I think I'll pose to Lisa, and then Christian, I'll come back to you on the disruption as well. But one of the potential barriers to having this industry, having gene and cell therapies really become extremely widespread would be just changing the payment systems. I mean, you mentioned potentially curative therapies, one-time therapy, thinking about taking, I don't know if you'd call it waste or just making things more efficient. If you could cure a disease with a one-time treatment, that's obviously an amazing thing for a patient, but it can be very expensive, and it absolutely changes the way companies have to think about pricing medicines and how payment systems pay for medicines. How would you say the system is working through that right now, both in the US and abroad, where it seems a little bit maybe more difficult in some markets?
Well, thank you. It's absolutely critical. As we talked about, obviously the science needs to be there, and bringing through all the clinical and regulatory milestones is crucial. And we didn't even get into manufacturing yet. But as it relates to commercialization, access is key. And without being able to bring these therapies, to your point, to the patients that we serve, it means nothing at the end of the day. And so what we're finding, again, we're in real time navigating this path. So we've been able to gain approval now in 39 countries. And we've had, a tremendous amount of success in the access front, both in the US as well as now ex-US as we've expanded geographically. So in the US, we have about 85% coverage on the public side, so Medicare, Medicaid, and about 95 to 98% coverage from a commercial perspective. But really, going in with the traditional models is not what's required, right? You have to go into this with, you have limited data sets. You have to go into this with kind of a solution-based approach where you're, again, as you said, you're bringing a one-time therapy into disease areas which are traditionally, looked at from a chronic perspective, lifetime of treatment. And so, we truly believe in value-based pricing, and we believe that the value is obviously tied to the transformation that it brings. And so we can't go in with traditional contracts, which we do in other therapeutic areas. We have to go in a way that really aligns with the system, whether it's a single payer system like in Europe or a much more fragmented system like we have in the US, and find ways to work with all the stakeholders that, can help to manage appropriately the budget impact, but also the value that these therapies bring. And so we've seen, in Europe, as well as, other markets all around the world, we've seen a very high receptivity to different types of access models, everything from deferred type pricing models, installment plans, like subscription type models, and also risk share is obviously a big opportunity, outcome-based programs where, the manufacturer as well as the payer reimbursement body shares the risk and manages over time. So I think we will need to see more of that as we go. Right now, we're still trying to find the balance of, the disease that we're in SMA is time-based. So time is neurons, as we say. So it's critical. Every day matters. So we've found a way to work with most of the payers. In Europe, we launched a day one access program, which is basically to invite every reimbursement body at the time of marketing authorization to work with us, where we can get the child treated ASAP and then still go through the formal reimbursement process as we go. We've had a tremendous amount of success with that. It takes a lot of obviously effort and collaboration across all stakeholders. But in the future, we need to take those learnings and build them into more sustainable reimbursement programs. So when these therapies come to market, those systems are also in place. So we're not navigating them in real time, but we know what the process is.
Right. I can imagine that it's the right thing to do, as you just said, time is neurons. But it also makes a challenging situation because you've given the patient the medicine, and then you're sort of maybe going back and trying to make sure that the payment can come through. And so that does seem to me like it could be a very complicated situation and widespread, difficult to do on a broader scale. Christian, I wanted to follow up on something you said in your first comments about stem cell therapies for regenerative medicine and thinking about disruption, and where is that field in terms of coming to fruition? I feel like stem cell therapies, regenerative medicine has been talked about just for so long, and we just haven't seen, a lot of it really coming to the fore. How are you looking at it? And tell us a little bit more about that part of your business.
Yeah, from the way we look at this, I think the unmet need is tremendous, right? So we do have to have the courage to go and explore these novel therapeutic technologies. Where the field right now is, I think it's still in an earlier and so-called embryonic phase. We will go through a learning phase. I think Lisa referred already we don't have a roadmap, we don't have the blueprint. And you ask, how do you plan for success? And I think you have to be in this for a longer term time frame. You have to prepare for learnings. So this is going to be challenging, but the impact you can make will be tremendous. And in terms of the opportunity of providing stem cell-based therapies, there are situations either in oncology or in degenerative diseases where you lose cells or tissues, where you have very limited capacity for self-repair. You have to fight cells with cells. You have to fight fire with fire. There is no other opportunity, I think, than exploring this. So you have to be really committed. You have to be smart and clever, and you have to have courage, I think, too, and prepare for learning loops. That is one of the best places to explore cell therapy in diseases their processes degenerate, and there's no other option than for repair.
What are some of the applications you're pursuing with that approach?
Right now, we have to go from the FDA. We're preparing to treat the first patient as we speak right now. It's super exciting in Parkinson's disease, where we all know that you have loss and dysfunction of certain neurons. So that's where we go first. And then we're building a pipeline in ophthalmology for cardiovascular diseases, and in gene therapy, which we tend to, I think I would invite us not to too closely gene and cell therapy, because to some extent they're really different and they have different opportunities. In gene therapy, we are focusing more on monogenetic or single gene defect diseases. I think there is important first to walk before you run. And we have multiple programs underway, and we will build on the learning and the successes. They will come, Megan. But it will happen. It has to and will happen.
I like to hear that. So let's talk about unplanned disruption and lessons from the pandemic. And Kieran, maybe we'll start with you. I mean, what has this past year plus been like at GE Healthcare? How has it changed the way that you do things? And are there takeaways to apply? We want to get rid of a lot of the things that we had to deal with in this past year, but what sticks around that was a helpful learning?
Well, so I think we made a massive leap forward in the use of digital health and digital technologies. And so to quote one of our hospital CEOs, he said, look, we made 8 years progress in 2 months in the beginning of 2020, because we were forced into a situation where we had to do telemedicine effectively. And of course, remote working meant that, so many physicians had to, and radiologists had to read scans remotely and so on. That put huge pressure on all of us to ensure that these systems were robust. And I think we made massive progress, and of course, huge adoption in digital technologies generally. The second point, Meg, I think that stands out for me is supply chain and the nature of global supply chains, because we all of a sudden woke up and realized, this really is teamwork, not just within companies, but amongst companies and amongst nations. Because, in our case, we saw COVID-19, of course, start in China. We had to divert a lot of product to China. We had to do massive scale up in manufacture. And that involved sourcing of components and really working at huge speed in collaboration with suppliers. And, in our case, of course, we made a lot of ventilators with Ford Motor Company, who'd never made a medical device before, but they had the capacity and we had the technology. And so that's the type of collaboration, I think, that was just extraordinary. And, the way I think that from a globalization point of view, I think we also realized that, the sense that people could sort of nationalize production systems, this is not sensible. And in fact, it can hold back innovation, and it can really slow down, the production of vital systems for the whole ecosystem. So it was an extremely challenging year, but from my point of view, the most rewarding thing was to manage a team of people at GE Healthcare who were extraordinary in the way they went above and beyond. We've 9,000 service engineers out there who put themselves at risk and went into hospitals every single day and every week to ensure that we kept hospitals up and running. And that sort of desire to really help is very gratifying when you're leading a business like that. And the ingenuity was extraordinary. We developed something called the CT in a box, but it was putting a scanner into a crate so that we could scan patients outside of a hospital setting, which we started, by the way, in China. We did the first one in a week, and then we did them in France and the UK and the US and so on. And, it's that pace of innovation when it's absolutely needed, I think is that's pretty rewarding to see.
Definitely. Lisa, what are the lessons from the last year for you guys?
Thank you. To Kieran's point, I mean, with the crisis comes a huge opportunity. And certainly, I think to his point, we've all seen significant leaps forward, more so than would have ever happened without, a stimuli as great and as global as we all encountered or are still encountering together. So same is true for us on the digital front. We've learned how to do things in so many different ways than we, again, never thought were possible. Everything from obviously maintaining our clinical trials, maintaining our operations worldwide, maintaining our ability to manufacture our products. And in the area like cell and gene therapy, this is still very manual. We're still at a manual phase. So obviously ensuring the health and safety of our associates was at paramount anyway. But in addition, when it can impact even the ability to be able to deliver our products to patients worldwide, we need to have people in the manufacturing facilities, obviously producing these medicines. And in addition to that, going through the regulatory process. So at the onset of the pandemic, we had approval in the US and we were just finalizing our approval in Japan. And then we since continued on to now having approval in 39 countries with Zolgensma, which is our first asset here in Novartis Gene Therapies, and also gaining access, to the other topics we were speaking about before. Prior to the pandemic, I don't think we ever thought we could do those things and launch in this many countries and achieve these sort of milestones remotely, all virtual for the most part, minus the manufacturing and of course our research teams. So I think, again, while the crisis has been difficult for all of us, it did significantly leap us forward in many areas across the board.
And Christian, I'll leave the last word to you before we go into a Q&A session, but what have been the takeaways from the pandemic for you?
One is, how you immediately have to adapt, right? So when you lead, you have to get rid of all the prior established processes. And being at a German company, trust me, we love processes, right? Way too much. So first you have to completely change. You can't work anymore and lead as you used to do. Right? And this is also a great opportunity for reflection. The other one, I have to say, a great sense of appreciation. We often refer to the commitment of the scientists, the people in the company who want to help patients, but their resilience to deliver in these circumstances, I still don't understand how we could keep up the trials running, the drug supply, the data generation. We made a commitment and we held on to it. So this experience of appreciation has been tremendous. And then the inspiration, look at the science. There was a virus that we didn't have the sequence. We did not know that beast. And then companies, I have to say, like Regeneron and Lilly, and then all the mRNA-based biotech companies, BioNTech, Moderna, CureVac, they delivered these highly effective and safe medicines with less than 18 months, which used to be, we would have predicted 5 or I don't know how many years. And that happened because every stone was turned to do things differently, right? There was so much commitment, collaboration. Fierce competitors became collaborators. There was innovation on all fronts, from the regulatory agencies, from the governments, and we really have to take that spirit forward now. I think we have to operate all like COVID-like. I don't accept anymore the timelines of our development programs. How would you do this if you were operating under the pandemic circumstances? Why is suddenly a patient with metastatic pancreatic cancer or a patient with heart failure not considered as a crisis for this patient or for this family? So we can't let this good, as you say, good crisis to go to waste. We can draw so much from that in terms of urgency, creativity, a sense of collaboration, and not taking a no too soon for a no. How these companies deliver that. And then I have to say our own experience when we worked with CureVac and mRNA is the first time experience for Bayer to go into vaccines and mRNA, but we had to build the operations, the technology transfer, the skills, the training of people, rapid investment decisions. And all of this happens literally in 1 week, which I have to be humble and honest to you, it takes usually 5 months. Suddenly it took 5 days. And I don't want to anymore go forward considering the processes as we used to. We owe it to the patients, we owe it to this crisis, to everyone. It is an inspiration, it's a learning, and a great sense of appreciation of what we as a society have done together in this industry, and an appreciation for innovation, right? What the power of this healthcare industry, the biotech power of innovation. This innovation didn't happen overnight. This was investments over decades that we were able to access and harness, and it wasn't recognized enough. This was a moment in time, I think, where scientific excellence and so much innovation and technologies came together and could deliver. That is an unprecedented time in history of humankind, I think, of delivering a medical solution for patients that need it. So a lot there that we should reflect and take forward.
Absolutely. I think that is a wonderful place to end this conversation. Thank you all so much. That was great.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Megan.
Lisa and Kieran.